7-year-old Alexis Patterson was a first-grade student at the High Mount Boulevard Community School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the spring of 2002. While she lived less than a block away from her school, her stepfather, lebron bourgeois, would still walk her there in the mornings. On the morning of May 3rd, he walked her to the school and watched her walk onto the playground with her pink Barbie backpack. Alexis would not return home from school. Alexis was absent from class that day. However, students reported seeing her on the playground, and some claimed that she was crying. While the school was the last place Alexis was seen, that does not necessarily mean that was the location she went missing from. Alexis was a well-behaved child with no history of trying to run away. However, the night before she went missing, Alexis got into an argument with her mother, Ayanna Patterson. Ayanna did not think that Alexis finished her homework properly, and as a punishment, Alexis was not allowed to bring cupcakes to school for her classmates as planned. Angry at her mother, Alexis could have wandered off after refusing to go into class and been abducted off of school grounds. However, this theory is challenged by some students who say they saw Alexis on the school playground after school. Perhaps Alexis acted out and did not go into school, but did not want her mother to find out, so she remained at the school playground for the entire time she was supposed to be in class. Given the short distance between her home and the school, if Alexis were abducted in the afternoon, it could not have been very far from the schoolyard. Supporting the idea that Alexis was abducted from the High Mount School were reports of a mysterious red truck. Students reported seeing a red truck parked near the school in the days leading up to Alexis going missing. The truck did not drop off or pick up any children. Sightings of the vehicle ceased after Alexis went missing. A solid link between the truck and Alexis's disappearance has never been made. The search for Alexis was one of the largest in Milwaukee's history. Officers and volunteers performed land and water searches, and helicopters were used to search larger areas. However, the investigation was not without controversy. Authorities were criticized for focusing on the criminal backgrounds of some of Alexis's family members. Alexis's father, Kenya Campbell, was in the process of being released from prison on multiple driving without a license charges when Alexis went missing. While he could not have been directly involved with his daughter's disappearance, he agreed to meet with authorities and cooperated with the investigation. lebron bourgeois, Alexis's stepfather and the last known adult to see her, had a far more troubling criminal past. He had served 2 years in prison for drug charges and had received immunity in return for his testimony about his role as a getaway car driver in a 1994 bank robbery that resulted in the death of a police officer. There are also unconfirmed reports that he failed a polygraph about Alexis's disappearance. However, there has never been any evidence linking anyone in Alexis's life to her disappearance. In 2016, hopes were high that Alexis was alive and well. A man from Ohio called authorities, claiming to know a woman who could be Alexis. This woman supposedly had no memory of her life prior to the age of 10, and bore a strong resemblance to an age-progressed image of Alexis, released in 2012. The woman in Ohio did not believe she was Alexis. She provided police with documents that verified her true identity. Police in Bryan, Ohio, still obtained a voluntary DNA sample from the woman and sent it to Wisconsin. Tests showed that the woman was not Alexis, but these findings are controversial to many close to the case. Following the announcement that the DNA samples did not match, the man who originally alerted the authorities to the woman in Ohio came forward to speak to the media. The man, who has only ever been publicly identified by his first name, Joshua, so as to prevent the public from being able to infer the woman's identity, was the ex-husband of the woman whose DNA was tested. Joshua alleges that the original test used a sample from a toothbrush collected in 2002 that did not conclusively belong to Alexis. The police have never confirmed where they obtained their sample from. Both Joshua and Alexis's mother, Ayanna, believe that Joshua's ex-wife is Alexis. They have been petitioning authorities to perform a new DNA test using a sample from Ayanna to test against the DNA from the woman they believe to be Alexis. Police have never performed such a test, as they believe the woman to have been conclusively ruled out as Alexis. A wreath is laid out at the High Mount School every year as part of a ceremony to commemorate Alexis on the anniversary of her disappearance. Alexis's mother, who divorced Alexis' stepfather shortly after Alexis went missing, faithfully attends, despite how emotionally taxing it is for her. While she believes her daughter is the Ohio woman ruled out by police, Ayanna Patterson still struggles with not being able to bring her child home. Bianca LeBron was a confident and outgoing 5th grader at the Elias House School in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The 10-year-old loved to shop, and her favorite color was purple. She lived with her mother, Carmelita Torres, and her stepfather, Angelo Garcia. While they were no longer together, Carmelita and Wilberto LeBron, Bianca's father, maintained a good relationship as they raised their daughter. On the morning of November 7, 2001, Bianca ate breakfast as her mother got ready to leave for work. Bianca and 4 of her cousins walked the 2 blocks from her home together, as they did every day. Their custom was to also walk home from school together, but Bianca would not be with them to walk home that afternoon. At 4:30 p.m., Carmelita became concerned because Bianca had not returned home. This was not immediately alarming, however. Bianca had lots of relatives who lived within walking distance of her home, and she loved to spend time with her many friends. This would not have been the first time she had failed to call home to report whose house she was visiting after school. She had once even spent the night with a friend without telling her mother, not understanding the panic that it would cause her. However, when 8:30 rolled around with no sign of Bianca, her mother began searching for her. Having no luck finding Bianca with her family or friends, Carmelita called the police at 10:30 p.m. The Elias House School was obviously an important site in this case. Police went to the school in the morning to interview school staff and Bianca's classmates. Bianca had made it to school that morning and had been waiting in line to enter the building with her teacher and other students in her class. She told some of her friends that her uncle would be taking her shopping that day. As Bianca loved to shop, this did not seem strange. Just before she entered the building, Bianca told her teacher that she was going to speak with her uncle. The teacher did not stop her. Students at the school reported seeing Bianca get into a dilapidated 2-tone brown van with a Hispanic male driver in his early 20s. The man did not try to obscure his face from the crowd of students, and Bianca seemed to be going willingly, so her friends assumed that the man was Bianca's uncle, picking her up for her shopping trip. There was just one problem. Bianca did not have an uncle. Based on interviews with the students in the schoolyard that day, police were able to develop a sketch of the man believed to have abducted Bianca. In April of 2002, police announced that they were trying to locate a 20-year-old man named Jason Gonzalez, whose actual name would be discovered to be Jason Lara. Police did not name Jason as a suspect, rather as an acquaintance of Bianca's. However, Jason resembled the composite image of the man Bianca left school with, and he had a friend who owned a van similar to the one the man had been driving. He had a criminal record that began before Bianca went missing and extended well after. He had also left Bridgeport less than a month after Bianca disappeared. Jason knew Bianca because his mother was dating Bianca's great-uncle. While it is known that the two knew each other, the full extent of their interactions has been highly debated. In the wake of Bianca's disappearance, reports range from Bianca having a simple girlhood crush on him to allegations that witnesses had seen the man kissing the little girl. Jason and his family have always maintained that he was never inappropriate with Bianca and that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. Jason eventually met with police, but they allege that he was not very cooperative. While Jason appears to be a solid suspect on paper, no actual evidence connects him to Bianca's abduction, and he has an alibi for the time it occurred. Despite Bianca's family doing everything from appearing on television shows, consulting psychics, and giving interviews to local newspapers, few leads have surfaced in the case over the years. In 2009, police dug up large sections of Bridgeport's Seaside Park after receiving a tip that Bianca had been buried there. Nothing was recovered. While Carmelita Torres has never wavered in her belief that her daughter is still alive and will one day be found, she had Bianca declared legally dead so as to file a wrongful death suit against the Elias House School. In the immediate aftermath of Bianca's disappearance, the Elias House School suspended Bianca's teacher without pay and updated their security and attendance policies. However, this did not undo the negligence shown when Bianca was allowed to leave school property with a man whose identity was not verified. Carmelita was ultimately awarded $750,000. The Elias House School has since been shut down. As a result of Bianca's disappearance, the once civil relationship between her parents has turned sour. They only communicate through their attorneys. Carmelita Torres eventually moved out of the home she shared with Bianca, after more than a decade of waiting there for her daughter to come home. Bianca's father, Wilberto, moved to Florida, where he walked his 3 other children right up to the door of their schools every day, for fear that one of them might meet the same fate as their sister. As of 2018, if she is still alive, Bianca will be 27 years old. Cary Sayegh was a student at the Albert Einstein Hebrew Day School in Las Vegas, Nevada. On October 25, 1978, the 6-year-old was enjoying the playground at lunchtime. Unlike his classmates, Cary would never make it back to class. Students reported an unfamiliar Rolls Royce on the school grounds around the time Cary vanished. According to a 12-year-old student at the school, Cary had been forced into the car by one of the 4 men who were riding in it. Approximately 3 hours after Cary had last been seen, a neighbor of the Sayeghs, who was in their home to help Cary's distraught parents, answered their phone. It was a ransom call. The caller demanded that Cary's parents prepare $500,000 to be exchanged for their son. He stated that he would call back on that Friday, the 27th, with further instructions on how to pay the money and get Cary back. October 27th came and went without any further communication from the kidnappers. While $500,000 is not an insignificant amount of money, Cary's father was in a position where he could have procured it. Sol Sayegh had started a carpet business upon emigrating to the United States, and by 1978, the business was very successful. Early on in the investigation, there were concerns that Sol may have been the reason for the kidnapping, for less flattering reasons. At the time of the abduction, Sol Sayegh was under indictment for a conspiracy to bribe a gaming commission official. His trial had to be postponed because Cary went missing, and the charges were ultimately dropped on compassionate grounds. The theory that the bribery charge led to Cary's abduction lost support quickly because an alternative theory gained traction even quicker. Police quickly focused in on a former employee of Sol's, habitual criminal Gerald Burgess. Several students claimed to have seen Burgess at Cary's school around the time he went missing. Burgess was known to the students because he would occasionally work as a handyman at the school. Burgess, who was dating one of the secretaries at the school, claimed he was only there to drop off lunch for his girlfriend's son. The neighbor who answered the ransom call also immediately identified the voice they heard as Gerald's. Suspicions against Gerald increased when he led police to one of Cary's shoes out in the Nevada desert. Burgess claimed that he knew where the shoe would be because he had been contacted by the kidnappers and was acting as a go-between between them and the Sayegh family. He was not able to substantiate this claim. While most of the evidence against Burgess was circumstantial, in 1981, a grand jury indicted him on charges of kidnapping and attempting to obtain money under false pretenses in relation to Cary's case, and in 1982, he went to trial. Burgess alleged that Cary was alive and living in Israel, but again, he could not substantiate these claims. Convicting Burgess was going to be a challenge from the onset of the trial, but it grew more and more difficult as it progressed. While several students claimed to have seen Burgess at the school, only the one student claimed to have seen Cary being forced into the car. This student testified at the trial that Burgess was not the man he had seen force Cary into the car. Burgess was acquitted due to lack of evidence. While Burgess never served time in relation to Cary's case, he was not a free man for quite a long time after Cary went missing. Burgess was convicted for a sexual assault he committed against a woman at the Albert Einstein Hebrew Day School, just a week prior to Cary going missing from there. He was also sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for swindling a couple from Texas out of $200,000. Burgess's legal trouble continued later in his life, and renewed suspicions about him in relation to Cary's abduction. In 2000, Burgess was arrested by the FBI following an 18-month investigation. Burgess, who, as a convicted felon, was prohibited from so much as possessing a firearm or ammunition, sold weapons to an undercover FBI agent and a confidential witness. During one of these transactions, he also threatened the life of the mayor of Las Vegas and a former federal judge. In the other, he made arrangements to dispose of a body for the confidential witness. Burgess told the FBI's witness that he would get rid of the body by sealing it in a steel drum and burying it in the desert. He also claimed that this was the method he used to dispose of Cary's body in 1978. Burgess had rented welding equipment just days before Cary went missing. Burgess cannot be retried for kidnapping due to double jeopardy. He has never faced any additional charges in the case. Saul Sayegh's life faced numerous more problems following the disappearance of his son. He sold his business in 1996, and in 1997, he and Cary's mother, Marilyn, divorced. That same year, he wrote a number of bad checks in casinos and went into over $7 million in debt to them. He fled to Israel to avoid felony charges in relation to these bad checks, but returned to Las Vegas after negotiating a settlement with the casinos. His federal charges were dismissed once he upheld the conditions of the settlement. While circumstances seem to indicate that Cary was killed by Gerald Burgess shortly after he went missing, his body has never been found, and doubts about his fate remain. In the late 1990s, there were whispers that Cary was alive and living in Boston, but nothing ever became of them. Cary's fate remains unknown.